Hey there, welcome to Friday. You made it. End of the week. We're all getting ready for the weekend. My name is Tom Carnell. Welcome to Carnell Knowledge. This is a show I do 3 times a week with some specials now and again on the weekends, in which I review / recommend 5 movies, a book, and 5 records. I've been doing this for a little while now, and I'm glad you guys are all along with me. Let's see. A little bit introduction. I was a buyer for Tower Records and Warehouse and Record Factory for about 20 years. I published Carpet Nocturne magazine, a dark art publication back in the 90s, and then I wrote for Fangoria and Dread Central for about 15 years, from like 2000 to about 2015. Now I'm an author. You can go to my Amazon page. I got about a dozen books. You can check out a lot of short stories, a couple of novels, that kind of a thing. Please watch this video to the end. It helps me with the algorithm. And if you have anything to ask or talk about or comment on, go to the comments down below and leave me a comment there. I get back to you pretty quick. If it's something you want to take offline, go ahead and email me at tomcarnell@gmail.com. Let's see. But that's all sort of housekeeping stuff. Let's get to today's show. We're going to start with our 5 movies. The first movie is from 1972. It's called JOSHU 701 Goes SASORI, aka Female Prisoner 701 Scorpion, directed by Shunya Ito in his directorial debut. It stars Ryo Yokoyama, who is in Ecstasy of Angels, Yayoi Watanabe, and then in the starring role, the great Mieko Kaji, who was in a film we previously talked about, Lady Snowblood. This is essentially about a woman who is used and betrayed by a detective that she's fallen in love with, and as a result of this is sent to a woman's prison. It's based on a manga by Toru Shinohara. This is a classic woman in prison film. It helped define the genre. It's the first of 6 films. With films like Caged in 1950 and Women's Prison in 1955, it set the stage. Those set the stage. Women in prison films hit their stride with Jack Hill's Big Dollhouse in 1971 and his follow-up, The Big Birdcage, later. This film came out in 1972. Later, there was a bunch of other women in prison films that were popular, like Bad Girls Dormitory in 1985 and Chained Heat with Linda Blair and Sybil Danning in 1983. This is pure exploitation. There are some artistic flourishes that are kind of cool. Has a strong sort of women downtrodden and then taking charge of their future in a way that is unexpected. They kind of capitalized back in the late 50s and 60s in Japan. There was something called Pinku films, which were basically nudie cuties that was happening in America. Dealt with sexual content. Some of it veered into what the Americans called roughies, where women were victimized. But the Pinku film, named hence because of the word pink, they're important because they were oddly, in a way to get around some of the censorship of the day. It was a way to sort of subvert some of those laws and practices by ratings boards. Some of this stuff can be a little rough, but they're important because, 1, they were wildly popular, and 2, just the way they operate, the way they show these women taking charge of themselves and their situation. They're interesting. There's a whole subgenre of this. A lot of people, they're fairly popular to this day. This, and then around the same time, in Japan, there were these things that were like girl biker films, where they were just like the biker films here in America, except that they were like all girl gang movies, and there's a whole slew of those, and most of those have really great soundtracks. I do recommend this film if that kind of a thing bothers you, I would steer clear. But they're important just because, mostly because of where they occur in the timeline and the way that genre has sort of mutated over the years. I think it's important to know all that stuff. So there you go. Our second film from 2012. It's directed by a number of people, Josh Oppenheimer, Christine Sin, and someone that they named Anonymous. Now, the Anonymous tag is basically the co-director as well as 48 other members of the film crew. In 27 different positions. A lot of people didn't want their name on this because as a result of this film, I'm sorry, the film is called The Art of Killing, or The Act of Killing. A lot of people got arrested in the middle of doing their interviews. It's a documentary that challenges former Indonesian death squad leaders to reenact their mass killings in whichever cinematic genres they wish, including Hollywood classic crime scenarios, and there's even some lavish musical numbers. So the main director, Joshua Oppenheimer, had traveled to Indonesia and was interviewing a lot of the Pancasala youth about mass murders that they took part in. He discovered a disturbing lack of remorse and almost the glibness about it all. A lot of people during the interviews, the police had caught wind of it, and they were coming in and arresting these people. It's a disturbing film. It's a fascinating film. I don't want to sell that part of it short, but again, it deals with people killing other people, and not in the Hollywood, grab your gut and kind of fall to the ground. It's not graphic by any means, but the subject matter is a little dark. And it is a little disturbing. It's an odd juxtaposition. There's a book called On Killing by Dave Grossman from 1995. That is, I think, is an important work. It's an important book, and I think that this is a fine sort of bookend to that. If that kind of thing interests you, then I do recommend the film. It was part of, I want to say, Fantastic Fest. Back around when it came out. It's fascinating. It's dark, but it's also kind of interesting. I mean, when the music number kicks in, you kind of feel like you've gone through the looking glass a little bit. But a fine film. I do recommend it, but again, I want to tell you to go in there with some knowledge of what you're getting into. Our next film is from 1968. This is called VARGTIMMEN, aka Hour of the Wolf. It's directed by Ingmar Bergman. Kind of a weird right turn there, but stars Max von Sydow and Liv Ullmann. The synopsis, as we say around here, is as follows. While vacationing on a remote German island with his younger pregnant wife, an artist has an emotional breakdown while confronting his repressed issues. Bergman originally wrote the script under the name The Cannibals, but then he had a bout of pneumonia and a change of heart. The Hour of the Wolf is basically the time between like midnight and 4 a.m. It's when a lot of people die, and it's when a lot of babies are born, oddly. This film, the pacing, like most Bergman films, is slow, and in this case, I found it not particularly satisfying. I'm one of those people who believe with Bergman. There's a line about David Lynch I once read that says, if you can't dazzle him with brilliance, baffle him with bullshit. And I think it kind of applies here. There's a lot of very earnest stuff going on that ultimately doesn't really amount to much. I'll be honest, I've never really, and this is poo-pooed in a lot of film circles, but I've never really got Bergman. I've watched most of his films, and I've come away kind of nonplussed. The Seventh Seal is probably, I think, his best film, but even that has its glacially slow parts. after a while, not even the novel kind of setting up of camera work and cameras and the acting can withhold the fact that this, or hold it together, that there's not a lot, usually not a lot of story there. It's a lot of, audience interpretation, which I just think can come from, dare I say, lazy storytelling. Let's see. Up next, 1958. This is an interesting one. It's called The Snorkel. It's directed by Guy Green, who did A Patch of Blue. Stars Peter Von Eck, who was in The Longest Day, and The Great Wages of Fear. By the way, sidebar on this. Wages of Fear is available on Tubi, and it's the film that the great film Sorcerer was based on. It's about a bunch of guys that are transporting nitroglycerin in trucks over a mountainous pass. Wages of Fear is great. I'll probably do that at some point. I'm sure it's long, but it's a great film. Also stars Betta St. John, who was in Horror Hotel, which we've covered here before, and Mandy Miller, who was in the film A Child in the House. It's kind of like a Columbo episode in that the film opens and it shows you not only the murder that takes place, but it also shows how the killer did it. In this case, he turns a lot of gas on in a house, shuts off a lot of pilot lights, dons a sort of breathing apparatus, and then hides under the floorboards while the body is discovered and the police come and do their investigations and go. And it's only then that he comes up out of the floorboards and escapes. It has a kind of a feel of a Nancy Drew mystery in that the young actress, Mandy Miller, immediately suspects the husband, immediately sets upon looking for proof of that. And then the rest of the film is sort of that taking place, her doing her investigation and that kind of thing. The acting is fine. The direction is competent. It's a little known Hammer films. Unbeknownst to me, I had always dismissed Hammer films as, the Peter Cushing, the Christopher Lee, that kind of stuff, the Frankenstein, Dracula interpretations. But who knew that there was this whole other level of Hammer films that were being done, where they tried other things out. One of the preeminent examples of it is a film called Cash on Demand, which I've now taken to be like a Christmas film. Peter Cushing's in it. Oh man, I've covered it here on the show before, but Cash on Demand is I highly recommend. It's great stuff. The reason to watch this is the intriguing opening and the sort of rollout on the investigation up until the ultimate ending, which I don't want to give away, but it's something that you kind of see it coming up Main Street, but when it happens, it's still a pretty novel kind of kick in the pants. So The Snorkel. It's again, seldom seen. That's a fun little time waster. Don't expect anything too great, but it's interesting, and it's a fine thing to throw on a Saturday afternoon, and I think you'll enjoy it. Up next, our last film is from 2010. It's part of a series I'm going to be doing. I think it's going to be coming up next week that I'm going to be covering one whole show. I'll be covering nothing but documentaries because I've just found a ton of them on Tubi. And a lot of them are really, really fascinating. This is called American Grindhouse. It's directed by Elijah Drenner, who did another great documentary called That Guy Dick Miller, which is a kind of a biography on the character actor Dick Miller. It's narrated by Robert Forster, who is in Jackie Brown. Eddie Muller, the film historian, is in it. John Landis from American Werewolf in London and a bunch of other stuff is in it. Kim Morgan is really great in this. She's a film writer and a historian. It's basically a documentary on exploitation films. And it sort of traverses from the silent era up through the 50s and the 60s and into the 70s. It's well researched. Talks a little bit about some of the exploitive aspects of the films Thomas Edison did, and that I didn't know any of that, but very cool. The choice of talking heads they get are inspired. It's well curated. These folks really know what they're talking about. It's a perfect, if you're interested in exploitation film, this is a great entry point, as it's not only comprehensive in timeline, but it also dives deep with some of the people being interviewed. Again, a common theme on this show is that it's important to know where we've been in order to know where we're going. And again, a lot of the talking heads that they talked to, this was again made back 15 years ago. So a lot of the talking heads that they talked to are now gone. And I think it's really important to not only understand their perspective and what went into making those films, but also to hear it from their own lips and their own takes on things. I think this is an important documentary. I think a lot of people, it's one that everyone should see, and not just because I'm getting something here. And not just because, especially if you have an interest in exploitation cinema and you want to know more about it. Moving on to our books. That's what I had to go grab. The Whispering Mummy. It's written by Sax Rohmer, who's famous for having created the Fu Manchu series. It's from this book. The copy that I have was released in 2011, but this story is really much, much older. It's like the early 20s, I want to say. It is about a European artist who becomes obsessed with a local dancer. He's struck by her uncanny resemblance to an ancient mummy that he's been using for one of his paintings. And then the attempts to use the living woman as his new model, things start to unfold. It is an essential read for people who are interested in pulp, because again, we got to understand stuff from the past in order to anticipate the future. The stories are a little dated. They read that way, but again, once you get into the rhythm of the prose, it's fantastic. I very much enjoyed it, and I think that Sax Rohmer doesn't get the credit that he deserves, not only for the Fu Manchu stuff. I think it's easy to paint the Fu Manchu stuff with this broad brush of racism, and it's clearly has that a little bit. It was written back in the time of what they used to call the Yellow Peril, and it was mostly fear of the unknown. It was a culture that a lot of Americans and a lot of Europeans didn't understand, so it was easy to paint it with that sort of villainous brush. But Sax Rohmer is a good writer and has a good command of action and what I call rollout. It's introducing of characters, introducing of locales, and then sort of traversing the story. Yeah, good stuff. The Whispering Mummy. You can find it on Kindle for a song. It's a part of numerous things that are marked the complete Sax Rohmer, and they're hardly that, but there's a lot of stuff in there. Just be careful that a lot of those complete editions focus mostly on the Fu Manchu stuff, which again is great stuff, but you can find these other things in other volumes, and again, they're all pretty cheap. Moving on to records. We're doing good as far as time goes. Our first one is a burner. This is from 2023. The band is called Drift Lab, and the album is called Moonlight. The most important aspect of this band is two things. One, they were inspired by a group of people that are stellar. Bach, Miles Davis, Frank Zappa, and a host of jazz fusion artists. But most importantly, the guitar player for this band is Matteo Mancuso, who is a young kid. He's in his 20s, I want to say, who is a kind of a YouTube sensation. He's a speedster guitar player who doesn't play with a pick. He plays like flamenco style with his fingers. And man, this guy just shredding doesn't even come close to what this boy does. All of his playing is super fluid, and It's complex and it's real pleasing to the ear. The rest of these guys, Manuel Montesanti, Federico Malamani, and Daniele Chiantis, they're top drawer Italian musicians. But again, Mancuso is really the highlight of the band. And it's it's a barn burner, man. The record reminded me of people like Virgil Donati, the drummer, Josh Meader, the guitar player, Jimmy Haslip, bass player, and then Greg Howe, another guitar player. It's great stuff. I hear everyone talking about, there's a great single you can find on YouTube now with Matteo Mancuso and Steve Vai, which kind of shows you the level that this kid is working at. But this Drift Lab is awesome. And again, I highly recommend it. Fans of fusion, fans of intricate, articulate playing will really love this stuff. Let's see, moving on to our next record, 1974, Montgomery. The album is called Reality. Montgomery is an American jazz bassist. He's the brother of the great Wes Montgomery, if you know that. He has a classic record called A Day in the Life, Wes Montgomery, and he's one of those guitar players that are just important, real cornerstone jazz stuff. It's reportedly, I couldn't find anything that doing against this, but it was the first bassist to record on electric bass, put on record on electric bass. And oddly, the bass player carries the melody line, which is pretty great. He is a terrific player. He played with the likes of Red Norvo, Hugh Masekela, Loveless Wallace, that kind of stuff. The record reminded me of albums by like Stanley Clarke, big time Stanley Clarke, Will Lee, some Phil Upchurch, LA Express, the great Carol Kay. If you know who Carol Kay was, she was a bass player that was part of the session group that played on everything in the 60s called The Wrecking Crew. Sidebar, there's a great documentary called The Wrecking Crew that you should check out if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Shows you just how good these guys were, but also like how good people like Glenn Campbell was. You kind of dismiss Glenn Campbell, but man, that guy was something. And then also as a bass player, he reminded me a little bit of Steve Swallow. Great stuff. I had heard of it as a result of one of those like crate diver records, the record picker kind of things, where there are videos on YouTube of guys going to record shows or going to garage sales and sort of leafing through boxes of mostly crap. But every now and again, they come upon something, and you know me, I have my pencil and my paper, and whenever something comes up and whatever, either what they say or there's something about the record that pings something in my head, I write it down and I go look it up. And this Montgomery record was one of those things. Our next record, 1979. The band is called Mecki Mark Men, M-E-C-K-I Mark Men. The album is called Flying High. This is straight up Swedish funk, rock, fusion kind of stuff. They opened, back in the day, they opened for people like Frank Zappa. They opened for Jimi Hendrix. And they are terrific. I highly recommend it. I think that they are, I had never heard of them. But again, this was a result of probably the same picker video that I saw. Again, I get these things, feeling in my gut that I see a record and there's just something about it that makes me go, I should look into that. And over the years, that's happened too many times and yielded too much gold for me to ignore it when it happens. So once again, you got to keep that notebook around and a little pencil around. And anytime you get that feeling, you write that down. It only takes a second these days with the wonders of YouTube and the wonders of things like Spotify and all the other streaming services that you can just take a chance. It takes you like 5 seconds. And usually most records, 30 seconds in, you can tell whether it's something that you want to hear more of and you want to maybe listen to the whole thing or what have you. Let's see. Our next record is from 2021. It's from Brazil. The artist is Marcos Resende and Index. Marcos, his last name is Resende. And Index, again from Brazil. This is old school jazz fusion. Again, all of these records, go into the description. You'll find YouTube links to complete playlists of the entire record, and you can just go ahead and listen to them there. This is keyboard based. There's some flute involved. There's not a lot known about this band other than this one record, and even that was out of print for years. It has been reissued within the last 10-15 years, but I had never heard of it, and I worked in record stores for years. And the record reminded me of things like Tom Scott and the LA Express, reminded me of things like Bob James, Earl Klugh, Dave Grusin, you feeling me? Stan Getz, Art Blakely and the Jazz Messengers. We're in that zip code. It's great stuff. And I love it when I find something that I had no idea about, and then suddenly I hear it, and it's like, it's not that I've heard it before, but it's like, oh yeah, that's that pocket that, it happened once upon a time. And it's just great. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. And our last record, I'm going to warn you, this is a little odd. The band is called MoeTar, MoeTar. The album is called From the Small Seas. They're from the San Francisco Bay Area. They're a progressive alternative pop band. One of the things I read described him as poppy prog, which I thought was kind of odd. The band, their influences are people like Frank Zappa, Queen, XTC, Yes, Genesis, Gentle Giant. Members of the band played with Lauryn Hill. They played with Secret Chiefs 3 and the always terrific Neurotic Michael Walden. This was their debut record. They disbanded shortly after making it. I think there's one other record that they did, and then they reformed as Raise the Maze. It's very syncopated music. It's almost, if there's a style of music called vocalese, and what vocalese is that it takes, let's say, instrumentals. Manhattan Transfer does it really, really well. They take instrumentals, and then they take let's say, whatever the melody line that the horn player is playing, and then they put words to it. Al Jarreau is another classic example of vocalese. This is hard to categorize. It's a challenging listen in a kind of a good way. I'm going to be honest, when I put it on initially, I kind of went, ugh, I don't know that I like this. And then by the end of the first song, getting into the second song, I found myself being won over. The girl's got a booming voice, man, and it's her diction is such that she's able to do those crisp melody line runs. It's really fantastic. There's some videos out. Again, go to the link and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's something that I was surprised when I heard it, and that made me want to hear the next song, and then hear the next song, and then the next song. It reminded me of things like District 97. There's a band called Modest Midget, and in a weird way, I kept thinking to myself, this is like, what if Manhattan Transfer did progressive rock? And I know that kind of bends the mind a little bit, but listen to it and you'll see what I'm talking about. By all means, if any of this stuff, if you do listen to it, please leave a comment and tell me what you think. Tell me if I'm on base, if I'm off base, or if I'm just full of shit, which is entirely possible. And that's going to do it for Friday. I got a special that I'm going to be working on. I'm going to be recording here a little later in the afternoon, and that'll come out probably tomorrow, the day after. And then we're back again. I got a whole another pile of stuff here for next week. Again, I'm here every Monday, every Wednesday, and every Friday. The specials will appear now and again. The Monday, Wednesday, and Friday is a pretty big chunk of my week. But please, by all means, like the video. You know the drill. Like the video, click on the link, share the video on your social media. I would really appreciate that. And tell a friend. I'm hoping to grow the channel a little bit in order to get this information out to more people, because it's what I'm seeing a lot, and I don't mean to talk a lot of smack about this, but a lot of the things I see out there on YouTube are things that everyone talks about. There's always like, hey, here's the latest from this band that just came out, or here's this movie that everyone knows about. Let me give you my thoughts on this brand new movie that everyone is talking about. That's fine, but that's not where my heart lies, and I think you guys can tell. And that's going to do it for me. That's going to be doing it for the week. I don't know how that came out, but again, we'll see you next week. And other than that, have a good weekend.